ومعنا الآن من فلوريدا ينضم إلينا من هناك سنديب شارما رئيس قسم الاستثمار في سنتكس كابيتال. سنديب، أهلا بك معنا. يعني بينما العالم يحاول أن يتحذر ما هي الخطوات القادمة من الإدارة الأمريكية خصوصا في الثاني من أبريل، بدأنا نلحظ البيانات الاقتصادية تتدهور في الولايات المتحدة، وخصوصا معنويات المستثمر ومعنويات المستهلك. لكن سؤالي الأول لك، هل هذا التراجع الكبير الذي شاهدناه في معنويات المستهلك أدنى مستويات في 4 سنوات ستترجم على أرض الواقع بخفض الإنفاق؟
Always a pleasure to be on your show. And the consumer sentiment data, regarding the outlook for the economy is certainly a little bit disturbing, but not unsurprising with the level of uncertainty in the system. I would caution that, making longer term investment decisions based on economic data are a little bit challenging, and more so when there is so much noise in the system where we don't know exactly where we're going to end up economically. Certainly, there is a possibility of a slowdown, could be a little bit worse. But I think I would caution making long term decisions where there is so much change in policy and there is so much uncertainty.
عندما أنظر إلى كل هذه الاستطلاعات وأرى الضعف فيها، هل من الممكن أن يكون سيناريو الركود هو أصبح السلف fulfilling prophecy، يعني نبوءة تحقق نفسها بنفسها بسبب ضعف المعنويات وليس لأسباب fundamental في الاقتصاد؟
Quite likely. I think the possibility of a slowdown, recession, or could maybe a little bit worse is certainly increasing quite rapidly. But we should also note that I think the administration probably has some kind of interest in having a little bit of a slowdown, because the call of the day is less the tariff conversation, but more the bond market crisis we have. More specifically, as we have been discussing, the level of intermediate rates because of the amount of debt the US has to finance. So, in summary, I think so long as the administration is able to contain the downside and manufacture a recovery out of this crisis, by the fall time, I think we're going to be okay. If it does get out of hand, we have a bigger problem. But I would submit that the biggest problem is if the intermediate rates don't come down, then we have a problem of a very different magnitude, and that'll be significantly greater than a short-lived recession.
دعنا نركز على هذه النقطة. ما هي معدلات الفائدة التي يجب أن تنخفض حتى نتجنب هذا؟ ولماذا لا يتم تخفيض معدلات الفائدة قصيرة الأجل سنديب؟
Well, the focal point here is not the Fed and the short-term rates, because they're not going to do very much to help either a significant recovery in the economy or, more importantly, refinancing of the U.S. debt. It would only help is if you were going to refinance the debt for very short-term maturities, which is really the problem that the administration is trying to get out of. So the man of the hour, or the focal point, is the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and the Bessent put is more critical than the Fed put or the noise created by the Trump administration in the tariff area. So the focal point, again, if you look earlier in January, the 10-year treasuries had peaked closer to about 4.8%, which was a very significant concern for, or should have been a very significant concern for all. Since then, we saw the 10-year spike or come down a little bit below 4.2%, and we are a little bit over 4.3% right now. So those rates need to come down, in my estimation, closer to the fall time or the end of the year, well below 4%, probably more in the neighborhood of 3.7 or 3.8%. And that's the most important thing to watch, in my estimation.
طب لمستثمر يتخوف من تفويت الفرصة، العام الماضي S&P 500 ارتفع بأكثر من 20%. هو يتخوف من أن يفوت فرصة أي ارتفاعات مماثلة هذا العام ويريد أن يشتري تراجعات. أي قطاعات تنصح المستثمر اليوم بشراء تراجعاتها؟
Well, we have talked in our prior conversations late last year and early this year, looking into the industrial area. We had talked about even looking at materials area, more specifically copper and other related industrial metals. I think those are still quite attractive. I think the area with precious metals with gold is a little bit kind of capped out. But healthcare also provides a very interesting opportunity coming out of the tariff conversation. So I think all of those areas look very good. And the last one I would add is energy. I think that looks very well priced for some recovery here.
جغرافيا شهدنا سنديب انتقال الأموال منذ بعض الوقت من الولايات المتحدة إلى أوروبا إلى آسيا إلى أسواق أخرى. هل تعتقد بأن هذا توقف اليوم، هذا الأوت فلو والإنفلو، أو أنه قد يستمر لبعض الوقت؟
I think a large part of the catch up, because these markets had lagged so much, both in terms of equity pricing or equity performance, as well as the strength of the dollar and the weakness in foreign currencies. I think a large part of that balancing out has taken place this year with money coming out, especially from the tech-heavy areas in the US and going into undervalued areas in Europe and emerging markets as well. And the case in point there, why we think tariffs are a little bit of a noise area, because then these areas should not be doing well. Secondly, currencies like the euro and many other currencies have stabilized versus the dollar, which also tells you that there is more stability and less noise from tariffs. But I think a lot of that reallocation of assets has largely taken place. I don't see a significant advantage to continuing to move more away from the US.
سنديب شارما، وأنت رئيس قسم الاستثمار في سنتكس كابيتال، شكرا جزيلا لك.